is Alice Bertaina, and I am a pediatrician, a stem cell transplanter, and currently I am the chief of the pediatric stem cell transplant program at Stanford.
And I'm Joe Oved, and like Alice, I'm a pediatric transplanter, though on the East Coast at Memorial Sloan Kettering, specializing in transplants for non-malignant disease. And so we're happy to discuss and give an overview on the session that we planned for the symposium on transplantation for aplastic anemia and bone marrow failure. And what we really tried to do for this session is to bring in a global perspective of how transplant has evolved as really the standard of care in most places for aplastic anemia in Europe, in South America, Africa, and as well as our experience here in the US.
Yes, and I have to say that we had a very exciting session with a lot of top class speakers, and we have important messages to give to the families, which I think need to be really informed about the progress that we made and some that we are making, and that very soon will be available to everybody.
Yeah, and so one of the key points that I took away from our session, and again, there was a really lively debate that I think stemmed from the fact that the question of transplant wasn't really the crux of the question anymore, but rather what kind of transplant patients should get, because our response rates and our cure rates have been so great, and the outcomes have been pretty much amazing at this point that, you know, the data from the different trials were almost comparable, I would say. Alicia, I don't know if you agree with that.
Yes, absolutely, Joe. I think that this is really important. Historically, we always thought that the transplant was a good choice for patients with severe aplastic anemia only if they had a fully matched sibling donor. But now we have seen that this high number of cure are true also for patients who receive a transplant from fully matched unrelated donor. And in some of the other sessions, we learned how either using a haploidentical donor, which is only 50% match, or a mismatched unrelated donor, 90% or 80% match, can actually give these patients the same probability of being cured. So this is really exciting because doing the transplant can really shorten the time from the diagnosis during which these patients are without neutrophils or requiring transfusion. And so the risk that these patients can get infections is lower. And it is amazing to know that this is an option available for everyone. And I would say wherever in the world these patients get diagnosed with severe aplastic anemia.
Yeah, and just to dovetail on that point, you know, I'm a little partial to the unrelated donor transplants, being that I'm sort of involved in that trial and first author. But you know, I was actually really impressed with Amy's haploidentical transplant outcomes with the PT-Cy, and think that that is sort of a platform that is readily exportable, as Carmem showed, to, you know, a variety of countries to provide cures for patients that otherwise would not have been able to get curative therapy with these types of outcomes. And so that was really exciting to see.
Exactly, Joe. I think that that's an amazing point. We share the passion for using some strategy of graph manipulation that can use those only in some institutions where these laboratories are available and specialized. But it's exciting to see that also patients living in poor income countries, for example, can have access to these treatments just with some tweak, and still their outcome is the same. So really, not only a donor for everybody, but this time a donor everywhere, which is really important.
I think one of the points that came through from one of the questions was, now that the outcomes are so great, both with the haplo-identical post-transplant cyclophosphamide approach, as well as the sort of the unrelated donor alpha-beta approach with the graph manipulation, one of the questions that we've been grappling with is what next? How do we improve on what already looks like a great therapy and great outcomes? And so that led to some discussion both during the debate and after the session.
And I would say that really, to this perspective, I think that the goals that we have to reach is how to minimize the toxicity of the conditioning regimen. And nowadays we have new drugs available that can already reduce the long-term toxicity. For example, reducing the risk of infertility, or reducing that cardiotoxicity that in the past was a problem, but also really how to optimize the treatment right after the transplant to reduce the risk of graft-versus-host disease, which is probably the most dangerous immune-mediated complication post-transplant that we really don't want to have in these patients. And several clinical trials currently ongoing, and a new clinical trial that will open soon, are really aimed at involving new strategies that can minimize especially the chronic form of the graft-versus-host disease, which we want to limit as much as possible.
Yeah, and as Alice said, you know, our groups tend to collaborate quite a bit together. So East Coast, West Coast, it works really nicely. And so, you know, we're working at Sloan on some of the conditioning regimens and personalizing, you know, things like the ATG that's part of the conditioning to improve the immune system recovery after transplant and minimize the immune suppression that's needed after transplant, so that we can really get the kids back to school, back to their normal life as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's very important. And I would say, feel free to reach out to either of us based on, you know, where you are located geographically in the country. We have a fantastic relationship, and we always discuss about patients and how to optimize their care. And we are happy to exchange opinions regardless where the patients get transplanted. And we are also joining our efforts really to make a clinical trials that can be open sooner, and that can give results in a timely fashion, so that we can really give these patients even a better outcome. Although I have to say, this is going to be really a very tough call, because the outcome nowadays for these patients with severe aplastic anemia is outstanding.
But I do hope that at the next symposium in 2 years, we're talking more about how we're reducing toxicity with the same outcomes, because I think that's really the next hurdle to face is how do we, you know, provide the same level of cure without, you know, compromising fertility or immune function or things like that. Similar to what we're seeing now on the leukemia side, where outcomes have become so good in children that they're de-escalating care to preserve all that toxicity. So, you know, I think we're in the same boat now in aplastic anemia. We're lucky to be there, and you know, I look forward to seeing how we bring down the toxicity, how we improve, you know, on these already great outcomes, and how we move the field forward.
I 100% agree. I think that needs to be really the next goal for the coming years, and I am sure that we will be able to achieve this goal with this fantastic group of physician scientists who are working on that.
So we look forward to hearing from you guys, and we look forward to answering questions. And the pediatric transplant world is a really small world. So like Alice said, we collaborate with one another, we talk to one another, we want to just find the best cure for each child. And I look forward to hearing and talking about some of the successes and progress we make in 2 years.
That was very nice to be all together. We wish we can, you know, see all of you, but feel free to reach out to us with questions, and looking forward to meeting you all to the next meeting.